The fast food restaurant buzzed with its usual afternoon rhythm, greasy fries hissing in the oil, soda machines humming in the background, and a soft bell chiming as customers came and went through the doors. The fast food lady was behind the counter, moving with practiced efficiency as she called out order numbers and flipped burgers with perfect timing. Kids laughed in the corner booth over ketchup-covered trays while elderly regulars sipped coffee near the window. It was just another day, familiar and uneventful, until something in the air began to change. At first, it was barely noticeable, a strange silence between gusts of wind outside. The sky dimmed slightly, clouds clustering together in unusual formations like silent whispers of what was to come. The fast food lady noticed first. She glanced out the drive-through window and frowned, the horizon tinted an eerie greenish hue that didn't belong. A breeze swept through the restaurant as someone entered, colder and sharper than it should have been. A distant rumble rolled through the air, not from a truck, not from traffic, but something deeper, angrier. She wiped her hands on a towel and stepped to the window again, peering out just as leaves began swirling violently in the parking lot. Inside, the customers kept eating, laughing, talking, unaware. But the fast food lady's instincts prickled. Something wasn't right. She'd grown up in tornado country, and the air had that heavy, charged taste she'd been taught to recognize. She turned to one of the younger employees and whispered, "Keep an eye on the sky." He gave her a puzzled look but nodded, sensing the seriousness in her tone. The fast food lady scanned a weather app on her phone, but the signal was lagging. The radar wouldn't load. Another rumble came, closer now, and this time it made the metal of the counter vibrate slightly. Customers began to glance outside too, faces slowly shifting from relaxed to puzzled. A little girl pressed her hands against the glass and said, "Mommy, the sky looks like soup." Her mother laughed awkwardly, brushing her daughter away from the window. That's when the fast food lady heard it. A deep, low roar, not like thunder, but like a freight train coming from nowhere. She dropped the towel in her hands and bolted to the kitchen, her heart pounding. "Everyone stay calm," she said loudly, turning off the fryer and the grill. She stepped back into the dining area, her voice rising above the murmur of conversation. "Everyone, I need you to move to the back of the restaurant now. This is serious." Confused murmurs followed her command, but she was already pushing tables aside, her eyes focused and unwavering. She pointed toward the reinforced walk-in freezer, the sturdiest part of the building. "There's a tornado coming. I need everyone to move quickly and stay low." A few people laughed nervously, unsure whether to believe her, but then the power flickered and the windows rattled hard enough to scare them into action. She grabbed a toddler from a panicking woman's arms and carried the child towards safety while urging others forward. The sky outside had turned nearly black, spinning clouds visible even through the restaurant's tinted windows. Wind howled around the building like an angry beast, rattling the doors. "Don't wait. Go now," she shouted, holding the door to the freezer open. One by one, the customers filed in, some crying, some clinging to strangers. The fast food lady was the last one in line, scanning the room for anyone left behind. A loose tray clattered across the floor, and then a chair flew sideways as the first real gust hit the building. She slammed the freezer door shut just as a loud crashing noise echoed through the restaurant. Darkness enveloped the space, broken only by the light of cell phones and the fast food lady's calm voice. "We're okay," she said, breathing hard but steady. "We're safe. Just stay quiet and breathe. We're going to ride this out together." Inside the freezer, people huddled close, their fear quieted only by her presence. The roar of the tornado grew louder outside, but she kept her eyes closed, counting breaths, praying the structure will hold. And for that moment, in the frozen heartbeat between terror and safety, she was no longer just a worker behind a counter. She was the reason they were alive. The walls of the walk-in freezer shuddered with each gust as the tornado screamed outside, tearing through the world like an unholy banshee. The fast food lady stood with her back pressed against the thick metal door, straining to listen through the chaos. A deafening roar filled the space outside their shelter, wood, metal, and glass being ripped from their places and flung into the wind like paper. Inside, every breath was held tight. A child whimpered. Someone began to pray. But the fast food lady remained still, her eyes closed, her breath steady. Her mind raced through every emergency protocol she'd ever learned, anything that might help if the freezer gave way or the storm got worse. The ground trembled beneath their feet, and the freezer walls groaned with the pressure. Somewhere above them, part of the roof gave out with a thunderous crack, followed by a rush of wind so fierce it felt like it was trying to suck the air out of the room. A man screamed in panic, but the fast food lady barked back. "We're okay. This is the safest place. We stay put." Her voice sliced through the fear like a razor, grounding everyone. She crouched beside the toddler she had carried in, pulling an apron from her waist to cover the child's head in case of flying debris. Her own hand shook, but her face showed no weakness. The people in the freezer began to draw strength from her composure, slowly straightening up, hugging each other tighter, and finding courage in her command. The wind intensified, as if the tornado itself were circling the building, testing its limits. A series of crashes followed, windows exploding, furniture tossed, perhaps even parts of nearby cars or trees hurled into the restaurant's frame. The power was fully out now, and the temperature inside the freezer dropped quickly. Still, the fast food lady made no move to leave. "We wait," she said again, her voice low and even. "We wait until it passes. Then we check for damage." Someone handed her a phone with a flashlight on, and she used it to scan the faces in the room, every one of them looking to her like she was the captain of a sinking ship. But she wouldn't let them go under. She paced the small space, checking for any signs of structural damage inside the freezer, knocking against walls, listening for unnatural creaks. The tornado outside roared louder, louder, and then suddenly there was a moment of impossible stillness. Not quiet, not peace, but a pause. Breath. The kind that comes before something terrible or something miraculous. Then came the second wave, an even stronger force slamming against what was left of the restaurant's frame. The entire freezer lurched slightly, and a loud crack ran through the ceiling above. Dust trickled down. Someone sobbed. A man held his daughter close and began to whisper a prayer. But the fast food lady didn't flinch. She stepped back to the door, braced herself, and prepared to push against it with her body if the storm tried to rip it off. "It's just the eye," she muttered, mostly to herself. "We're in the middle of it. It'll pass soon. Just hold on." She looked at the faces again, at the fear still lingering in every set of eyes, and she knew that if she crumbled, they all would. So she stood tall. She took a deep breath, and she told a story. A story about her grandmother's diner that had survived a tornado years ago, about how it was rebuilt with help from neighbors and strangers alike. The people in the freezer listened, not because the story mattered, but because her voice did. Because it reminded them that the world still existed beyond the storm, that this moment wasn't the end. Slowly, the rage of the wind began to weaken. The growling roar began to fade. The sound of objects smashing against the building turned to silence. And finally, all that remained was the sound of people breathing together in the dark. Minutes passed before the fast food lady let herself believe it was over. She pressed her ear to the freezer door. Nothing. She waited longer just to be sure. Then she slowly, carefully opened the door a crack. The restaurant was unrecognizable. Tables overturned, ceiling tiles missing, windows blown out, and debris everywhere. But the back of the building, where they had hidden, had held. She turned back to the people behind her and gave a single nod. "We made it." A woman broke into tears. A man clapped his hands together in gratitude. But no one moved until the fast food lady said it was okay. And as she stepped out into the wreckage, the wind now quiet and the sky beginning to clear, they followed her, not as scared strangers, but as survivors, led by the woman who had refused to let go. The smell of wet insulation, dust, and something acrid filled the air as the freezer door swung fully open, revealing the wreckage left in the tornado's wake. The fast food lady stepped out first, her shoes crunching over shattered glass and fragments of ceiling tile, her eyes scanning every inch of the space that used to be a place of laughter, routine, and simple meals. What was once a neatly arranged dining area had been turned into a battlefield of twisted metal, torn booths, and scattered belongings. The wind had ripped through with surgical cruelty, sparing nothing in its path. But somehow the walls near the freezer had held, forming a small cocoon that saved every soul inside. She inhaled sharply and turned back, motioning to the others to stay where they were until she assessed the safety of the surrounding area. Stepping over fallen light fixtures and overturned tables, she moved like a commander through a ruined command post. Her apron was torn, her face smudged with grime, but her focus was unbroken. She made her way to the front of the building, where sunlight now streamed through gaping holes in the walls and roof. The parking lot outside was a different kind of nightmare. Cars flipped onto their sides, debris scattered like confetti, trees uprooted, and power lines dancing like snakes across the ground. She ducked as a broken ceiling panel wobbled and fell behind her. Still, she pressed forward. Once she confirmed there was no immediate danger, no gas leaks, no electrical fires, she returned to the freezer, eyes firm. "It's bad out there," she said, her voice calm but honest. "But we're alive. We made it. And now we help each other." One by one, people began to step out of the freezer, clutching their children, their phones, their purses, their sense of disbelief. The fast food lady organized them quickly, assigning tasks based on who was injured and who could still move. "You check on the older gentleman in the corner booth area. You help gather any first aid supplies you can find in the kitchen." Her tone was resolute, not barking orders, but guiding with the quiet authority of someone who had already saved their lives once. Some of the people were dazed, in shock, or trembling from delayed fear. She moved among them like a human anchor, placing a steadying hand on a shoulder here, a comforting word there. In the kitchen, she pulled open broken drawers and cabinets, collecting gauze, burn spray, ice packs, even plastic wrap to improvise bandages. She instructed someone to gather bottled water from the storage room, using a plastic crate to carry it all back. Cell phones began to buzz faintly, signals flickering in and out, but calls weren't getting through. She looked at her own phone, its screen cracked, but the flashlight still working. They were cut off. No rescue would be instant. That realization could have sparked panic, but the fast food lady didn't let it. She gathered everyone near what was left of the counter, positioning them away from weakened walls and unstable structures. She used a broken menu board to block a sharp protruding pipe and marked the floor near loose wires with bright ketchup packets to warn others. "We hold here," she said. "We stay together until help comes. If we move through this wreckage too fast, someone could get hurt." Her ability to lead turned confusion into cooperation. People began sweeping past through the rubble, using broken broom handles. Others used their jackets to create makeshift seats for the injured. When a baby began crying from hunger, she instructed the mother to check the walk-in fridge for any safe formula or milk left intact. Despite the destruction, a strange rhythm took shape. People helping people, calm restored by a voice they now trusted without question. As the sun climbed higher and illuminated the mess outside, the fast food lady walked to the front doors, or what remained of them, and looked out toward the street. Power poles were down for blocks. Nearby buildings looked equally ravaged. The whole area was quiet in that eerie post-disaster kind of way where even birds forget to sing. Then, in the distance, she saw the flashing lights of an emergency vehicle weaving carefully through the debris. Relief washed over her, but she didn't allow herself to collapse in exhaustion yet. "They're coming," she told the others. "Rescue is coming." But we stay calm. We don't rush. We make it easy for them to reach us. She directed a group to wave down the vehicle, using pieces of neon uniform shirts they had torn into flags. When the first responders finally entered the building, they found not chaos, but a structured group of survivors huddled together in the safest part of the restaurant, tended by the very woman who'd saved them. One of the medics, stunned, asked who had taken charge. A chorus of voices answered as one, the fast food lady. She stood to the side, arms folded across her chest, eyes scanning the room one last time to ensure no one was missed. Even as paramedics began helping the injured and police began assessing the scene, she didn't let herself rest. There were still tasks to be done. She helped lift a fallen beam from a corner of the dining area. She helped carry water bottles to a woman too weak to stand. And in the quiet moments between all of it, she made sure no one felt alone. As emergency responders moved through the wreckage, assessing damage and transporting the injured, word of what had happened at the fast food restaurant began to ripple outward. Neighbors, local reporters, and rescue workers whispered about the fast food lady who had led an entire group of customers to safety, kept them calm during the worst of the storm, and organized them afterward with a clarity and strength that belied her uniform. But while others spoke in awe, the fast food lady stayed focused. Even as she finally allowed herself to sit, her legs aching, her hands bruised, her eyes were still trained on the people around her, making sure no one was overlooked or forgotten. A police officer approached her with a notepad and asked for her name, but she waved him off. "It's not about me. Just make sure they're okay," she said, pointing toward a group of older customers wrapped in blankets. The officer nodded slowly, scribbling fast food lady instead. That was the name that would stick. News vans began to show up, carefully navigating around debris as they parked outside the battered restaurant. Reporters stood in front of ruined windows with microphones, narrating stories of survival and unexpected heroism. Cameras panned across the damaged building, pausing briefly on the people still gathered inside. Some of them smiled when they saw the fast food lady, while others simply looked at her like she had saved their entire world. One reporter approached the camera crew and asked if she'd be willing to speak. She declined at first, wiping dirt from her face and glancing at the mess behind her. "There's still work to do," she said. But when the reporter asked again, gently, and promised to highlight the collective spirit of the people she protected, she nodded once. Standing beside a collapsed booth and twisted steel legs of a former table, she spoke into the microphone with a voice that was tired but unwavering. "I just did what had to be done. We were all in it together. That freezer saved our lives, but what really mattered was that no one panicked. Everyone stayed with each other. That's how we made it." Her words, though few, were carried across the town by every news station, and soon the fast food lady became more than just a nickname. She became a symbol. The town's mayor visited the site the next day, stepping over wreckage and offering her a plaque of appreciation, something hastily put together but sincere. The fast food lady accepted it quietly, holding it in her calloused hands as if unsure what to do with it. She didn't ask for photos or praise. She simply nodded, thanked the mayor, and returned to helping others load salvageable goods into trucks. Over the next few days, people from all over town came by to drop off food, water, and blankets for those who had lost their homes. The restaurant remained closed, of course, barely standing, but it became an informal community hub, a symbol of resilience where the fast food lady often sat under a plastic canopy directing supplies, guiding volunteers, and making sure everyone left with what they needed. Local schoolchildren drew pictures of the tornado and the fast food lady leading people into the freezer, their crayon-colored sketches taped to a makeshift board next to the collapsed drive-thru. Volunteers from nearby towns came to help rebuild, and they always asked first, "Is the fast food lady here?" Somehow she was always there, moving between tasks, comforting those still shaken, and refusing to leave until the last customer she'd saved had a roof over their head. As the cleanup effort grew more organized, she began to slow down, finally allowing herself a moment to sit with a cup of lukewarm coffee in her hands. She looked out over the lot, cleared now of most debris, and took a long breath. The sky, once so dark and violent, was a soft blue again. A few birds chirped in the trees that had miraculously survived. She closed her eyes and let the silence wash over her. For the first time since the storm, she let herself feel everything: the terror, the adrenaline, the weight of responsibility, and the quiet pride in knowing she had done something that mattered. People continued to stop by throughout the day, offering their thanks, hugs, and sometimes just silent nods of appreciation. One man, who had clutched his daughter in the freezer that day, brought her over with a simple thank you and a drawing the girl had made, a picture of the fast food lady standing like a shield in front of a swirling tornado. The lady took the picture, smiled softly, and pinned it inside the cracked doorframe of the building. She didn't need awards or interviews. That drawing said more than any headline ever could. Slowly, as the town began to heal, she resumed some sense of normalcy. Her shifts at the fast food chain wouldn't resume until it was rebuilt, but she stayed connected to the community that had come to admire her. At town meetings, people asked her opinion. At the grocery store, strangers offered to pay for her items. At night, when she walked through the quiet streets, she felt different, not famous, not special, but part of something larger. She had shown people what was possible in the face of disaster. Not by being perfect, not by being fearless, but by standing firm when it mattered most. And though she never said it out loud, she knew that when a tornado came, she hadn't just saved lives. She had saved hope. Months passed. The scar the tornado left on the town didn't fade easily. Shattered homes, broken trees, and the memory of screaming wind still echoed in people's minds. But little by little, things began to mend. Construction crews became a daily part of the landscape. New roofs replaced ripped shingles. Families rebuilt, neighbors reconnected, and the story of survival during that terrible day became a shared legacy. At the center of that legacy stood the fast food lady. The restaurant she protected had been declared structurally unsound after the tornado, eventually torn down with machines that growled and chewed through twisted steel and splintered booths. But its replacement was already in motion. Plans were drawn not just to rebuild the restaurant, but to make it stronger, safer, a structure that could stand up to another disaster if it ever came. The new design included a reinforced storm shelter, wider hallways for quicker evacuation, and even an emergency supply closet in honor of the calm leadership that had saved so many. The fast food lady was there when the first concrete was poured. Not as an official, not in a hard hat or behind a podium, just as herself, standing off to the side, hands in her pockets, watching the new foundation take shape where so much had once been lost. The town insisted on honoring her again during the reopening, this time with a more permanent gesture. Outside the new restaurant, beside the main entrance, they installed a plaque. It was simple but powerful, to the fast food lady, who reminded us that heroes wear aprons too. And beside it, a metal sculpture was placed, a minimalist piece depicting a group of people huddled together, one figure standing between them and a swirl of wind, arms outstretched. She didn't cry when she saw it. Not there, not in public. But later that night, sitting on her porch, she stared at the moon and let the weight of it wash over her. It hadn't been easy. She'd carried the fear of that day quietly in the weeks that followed, reliving the moments in the freezer, the trembling in her limbs, the sense of responsibility that hadn't gone away even after help arrived. But seeing the town rebuild, knowing those people were still walking around, hugging their kids, smiling again, it made every terrifying second worth it. When the restaurant reopened, the fast food lady returned to work. Her first shift back was met with applause as customers lined up not just for fries and burgers, but to shake her hand. Some brought thank you cards. Others just looked at her with a kind of gratitude that doesn't need words. She took it all in stride, never asking for recognition, never demanding to be treated differently. She flipped burgers the same way she had before, cleaned tables, greeted guests, but now there was something different in the way people looked at her. They saw her not just as an employee, but as the one who had stood between them and disaster and never flinched. The new restaurant became more than a place to eat. It became a symbol. School field trips came through to talk about emergency preparedness, and kids always asked, "Is the fast food lady working today?" Travelers who'd heard the story stopped in to see the sculpture and take a picture with the plaque. It became a local landmark, not for its food, but for its story of survival and leadership. And through it all, the fast food lady remained exactly who she'd always been, humble, reliable, and steady as a rock. One day, a young woman who had been in the freezer that day came in and applied for a job. "I want to work where she works," she told the manager. "If she could stay calm through that, maybe I can learn to be like her too." That, more than any ceremony or statue, moved the fast food lady most. She trained the girl herself, showing her how to run the fryer, how to handle a rush, and quietly, how to recognize the signs of danger in the air. Over time, more stories surfaced. Other people who had gone back to school, started community safety programs, or taken CPR classes, all inspired by her courage. She never sought attention for it. She just smiled and kept moving forward. The restaurant thrived. But more importantly, the town did. Its people were tighter knit than before, more prepared, more compassionate. The tornado had torn through their homes, but the fast food lady had reminded them that buildings can be rebuilt. What mattered most was each other. And in the middle of all of it, day after day, she continued to show up, hair tied back, name tag on, hands moving with quiet purpose behind a counter. Because for her, being a hero wasn't about a moment. It was about showing up, doing what needed to be done, and never backing down, even when the sky turned black and the wind came howling. Her legacy wasn't just the lives she saved. It was the strength she sparked in everyone who watched her stand tall when the storm hit. And in that town, her name didn't need to be spoken. She was simply and forever the fast food lady who saved them all.